Okay, before we get started today, we're going to talk a little bit about words and phrases that stand for certain things. So when we've talked about mathematical terms before, there are lots of ways to say addition. I mean, obviously the easiest one to think about is add, but you could say sum or total. You could say increased, or you could also say increase by, that would be okay. More than, combined, any of those would be words that are pretty easy to figure out that have to do with addition. Now, if I was going to talk about words that have to do with subtraction, those would be words like minus, difference, fewer, take away, less than. Now, I could go through and make a huge list of these, but either way, if you're looking at addition or subtraction, they're words that we might use naturally in the real world that stand for those kind of things. Now, I'm going to keep going, but don't be afraid to stop this video and pause it in order to be able to write down things or take pictures, because being able to have this stuff as reference will really help you later on as you're working your way through the section. So, words or phrases that stand for multiplication. Obviously, times, product, double. If I double something, that means I'm multiplying it by 2. If I triple something, that means I'm multiplying by 3. And I could keep doing, I could say twice. Lots of things that go through and start to stand for multiplication. Now, division, there aren't quite as many. Division could be quotient, separated into, out of. So those are things that have to do with division. Now I want to show you how this plays into having an algebraic expression. So if I have m divided by 7, I could write it like that. That's m divided by 7. Now remember, in division, order matters. So if m's first and then r, we have to make sure that it looks like the m on the top and the 7 on the bottom. I could also do m divided by 7. Either one of those would be okay. And our clue word there was divided. So in the next one, the product of x and 8, product stands for multiply. So most people would try to write it like this. But if I have a number and a variable that I'm multiplying together, then almost always that number is going to go in front and then the variable. So if I write 8x, that means 8 times x. Okay, let's see if I can go through. I want to look at just a few of these. So this one is a very interesting one. Groups. Oops. Let's see if I can get my... There we go. If we have 9 groups of W, that would be 9 times W, which would be 9W. Here's an interesting one. This one says 13 take away K. So take away is minus. So 13, and I'm going to take away whatever K is. Okay, here's one more that's kind of similar to that, but it's written a little differently. 15 less than G. So if it's 15 less, I'm going to have to subtract 15. And then G would have to go in the front. So pay attention to how it's written, because some of those can really change the way you're looking at them. Okay, on this one, it wants you to write a phrase for what happens here. So if you have 8c, you could write that as 8 times c. If it's p minus 2, then you could do p minus 2, or you could say p take away 2. Lots of ways that you and I could both write it and it could still be right. Okay, let's go down to this one right here. So d, divided by 4. Another way you could write that is you could say it's the quotient of d and 4. Now, d would have to come first because order matters. Remember, with subtraction and division, on both of those it does. So this gives you some idea of how those algebraic expressions work when you have to either read them and understand them, or you have to write them. So let's also take a look at, when I'm talking about an algebraic expression, remember that means that it's just basically a math phrase containing numbers, variables, and or operations. So it could have some of those, it could have all of them, as long as it's some combination. So if I were looking at examples, having x plus 2 could be a good example of that. Or 6x squared minus 7. Or even if I just wrote 8, that's still considered an algebraic expression because it has a number. So there are times when they're going to ask you to evaluate an algebraic expression. That basically means that you're going to plug in a number for a variable. We have to make sure when we do it that we use parentheses. And then we're going to have to simplify whatever they have left over. And I want to just show you a couple of these so you have a little bit of experience with them. I won't do all of these, but I want you to at least know what's going on. So if I was going to evaluate each expression given the value for the variable, on number 1, I have 5x squared plus 9. So that means that wherever these x's are, I'm going to put in negative 2. And remember, we said we have to use parentheses if we're going to do that. So I'm going to take the x's out and put parentheses in their spots. And then I'm going to take this negative 2 and plug it in all those places. And now I need to do a little bit of solving. So if I'm looking at this, I have 5 times negative 2 to the second. So this order of operations, parentheses come first. So negative 2 times negative 2 would be 4. And then 5 times 4 would be 20. Okay, now if I bring down my plus sign, um, 9 times negative 2 is negative 18. So 20 plus a negative 18 would be 2. Okay, so when you're evaluating, you're plugging values in, and then you're going to simplify everything that you have. Okay, so let's take a look at 3 before we call it good today. This is negative a to the third minus b. So that means I'm going to take out the a and I'm going to put a 2 there. And I'm going to take out the b and put a -7 there. So now I've kind of plugged them in where we said. I would want to, I think I would probably want to look at this part first. So -2 to the third, or excuse me, 2 to the third would be 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, times another 2 would be 8. And I'm going to bring the negative down, so it's -8. And then if I go to the next part, bring that down. Now remember, we say 2 negatives make a positive. So -8 plus 7 is going to be -1. Okay, that's really your focus for this week as you're working your way through.